Welcome everyone to the Electrical Culture of Safety LiveWire program, where we delve into all the complexities of creating a culture of safety within the electric utility industry. In each episode, we feature interviews with subject matter experts, industry leaders, safety professionals, and field personnel from across the industry, where we discuss ways to develop a collective reflection of the perception, attitudes, and shared experiences of the safety culture within our industry. Welcome to ECOS LiveWire.
Hey, welcome aboard ECOS LiveWire, and I'm happy for our guest here today. It's very exciting to have him aboard LiveWire 011, and Mr. David McPeak. Known him for several years now, and we've become buds here in the industry, and he's a great guy, passionate guy, and genuine. And so we're going to talk with him today, pick his brain a little bit, and hear some of his line wisdom and safety and building the team, our line team around the country. And he's doing a great job, does great work. So I'm going to read his bio. David is the Director of Education and Professional Development at the Incident Prevention Institute of Utility Business Media, a leading producer and publisher of safety-focused leadership content. Their mission is to provide information, education, and networking opportunities to utility, safety, and operations leaders. Their wide array of offerings are highlighted by IPI forums, the Frontline Training Program, IP Utility Safety Conference and Expo, Certified Utility Safety Professional, certifications, CUSP, and Incident Prevention Magazine, which the magazine, folks, if you aren't getting that magazine, something's wrong, because that magazine's free and it's powerful. So definitely get a hold of the Incident Prevention Magazine. Get involved with the IPI forums and frontline training programs as well. In his role, David oversees education focused on providing personal and professional development to current and future leaders. He passionately facilitates learning centered around human and organizational performance, incident prevention, leadership, and safety, along with certification preparation. His entertaining and engaging style has encouraged and motivated tens of thousands during classes, conference presentations, forums, and keynote speeches. And I can attest to that. That's all major awesome. He has multiple certifications and has received numerous awards, including Rising Star of Safety from the National Safety Council and Carolyn Alkier Safety Advocate. He was recognized by the Department of Labor for outstanding contributions to apprenticeship and nominated for an appointment to the North Carolina Apprenticeship Council by the Commissioner of Labor. He served as chairman of Task Team 1 of the OSHA Electrical Transmission and Distribution Partnership and was a member of the Executive Board of Utility Safety and Operations Leadership Network. David resides in North Carolina with his wife and son. He is an active member of his church and enjoys spending time with his family, often on the basketball court, golf course. He plays golf, but is not a golfer. That's good. Or upside down on a roller coaster. To find out more about David or engage him for training or speaking opportunities at your next event, contact him through the IP at ip-institute.com. And David, man, come on in, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, appreciate you having me here. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I don't remember when the last time I saw you. Was it at the conference in where were we at? Maine? Where were we at?
That might have been
Austin?
The last time. It's been too long. Yeah, it's been too long.
Wow, that's amazing. No, the IP conference that we just had in Dallas. That's where I saw you. Okay. Man, see, you're forgetting things too.
Still been too long, either way.
I know. Hey, so tell us what's going on, man. What you've been up to lately? Any new innovations with IP? What's happening new? You got the conference coming up at the end of April. Tell us a little bit about that too.
Down in your backyard, yeah. April, I believe it starts on April 29th.
Yes,
that
sir.
week, Tuesday through Thursday, in Charleston. Great destination to go to, and I love those events. And I always say, we do it obviously for the expo hall, the education that we offer, networking opportunities for folks. But that conference, it never ceases to amaze me when just the people that come and truly want to be there and want to be involved. And I always joke because we spend a lot of time trying to line up a really good agenda of presenters, education, both in the expo hall and whatnot. And I think more education goes on out in the halls and at lunch with just people talking than does in any of the classroom settings. And I love that. So I hope if folks have been that they'll come back, and if they hadn't, check it out sometime. It's definitely it's a good event. It's great.
You know, David, by attending the IP conferences, I have spoken with a few linemen that have attended, and man, I would truly like to see more of the folks to attend that aren't necessarily, at least now, attempting to retain their CUSP certified CUSP certificate, their hours, but just to attend to learn so much. And I'd really encourage the higher ups to gather some of their folks to attend once in a while, even apprentices, man. I mean, there's so much leadership and communication skills that can be had. To me, the value of bringing everybody in is just incredible. What's the resource that you all supply?
I agree.
So
I'd love to see more of a variety across organizations. Anybody that can will find value in it, all the way from the CEO down to apprentices, whoever, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, I've been reading your book. It's hard for me to put it down, actually, because it's so rich. But your book, Frontline Incident Prevention, The Hurdle. Tell us what kind of motivated you to write that up, because there's a lot of practical, unbelievable things that are inside those pages.
Right. So our mission at IPI and utility business media as a whole, the company, education, information, and networking opportunities for folks in the utility industry. And there are, to your point, I mean, coming to conferences, going to training, a lot of the things that we offer are not things that everybody's going to have the opportunity to do and to do frequently and regularly. So one of my huge motivations for writing both my books was just to give it another form of media that's available to anybody that wants it, either as a follow-up or a replacement for, or somewhere in between a lot of the training that we do. And to your point, it's a message that I really think folks need to hear. It's all about, that book in particular is all about, we're really, really, really good at the science of safety. A lot of your company, I mean, the meters you make, folks that make PPE, we've got, 100% fall protection. We got cars that will stop themselves, keep you from wrecking. I mean, all these things. We've gotten really good at the science of safety, but that really doesn't matter a lot if we're not good at the art of safety as well, which is what that book talks about. And that's more understanding how, and really understanding people and being able to effectively interact with them, make safety something that is somehow appealing to people rather than something that we have to do. Huge negative connotation just associated with that word. Just the word safety. If you ask people, like, when I say safety, what's the first thing that pops in your mind? And it's always, I mean, it's basically something I have to do that's uncomfortable, makes my job harder, and I'm gonna get in trouble if I don't do it. In some form or fashion. How the responses get summed up, and it's a shame because safety is the thing, short of probably drinking water and eating food kind of things. Safety and security is one of our most basic human needs, and it's something that historically I feel like we've done a disservice because we've made it that way, right? It's that negative connotation, and it's really something that people should be excited about. And so that somewhere in all that is the motivation for doing that. And a lot of people just as through trainings and speeches and conferences and whatnot, hey, you should write a book. You should write a book. Sooner or later, after enough people say that, you're like, well, I should write a book.
Yeah. That's cool. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the book. I've got a few outlines here in the book that I'd like to discuss and then get your take on that portion. If that's okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. So you'll notice I take a lot of notes because I get kind of crazy with things, but I'll just show this. You can kind of see I get kind of crazy with a pen and marker and everything, but it just helps me remember because, man, I need all the help I can get. So I mark up books.
Love that.
That's
why
okay.
you may know more about it than I do, though. At this point, we may have to change the structure here.
So I want to read this little section here, kind of at the very beginning, about incident prevention and then safety, just real quick, and then I'll let you elaborate. So incident prevention, part of safety involving actions taken, barriers positioned, and controls designed to eliminate or reduce undesired events that cause harm to people, property, and systems. And basically, number 2, stopping bad things from happening. And then you go into safety, which is interesting. Individual and organizational responsibility. And I like bringing those two together. It's so crucial to act, think, plan, and work in a manner that prevents harm and encourages growth. I like that. You don't hardly hear that anymore. Number 2, ensuring good things happen. And then you kind of nutshell it up here. And this is what I really like. Exceptional safety equates to caring about people. Love that, man. And that's the truth right there. It is achieved when organizations and employees work together, believing it is a competitive advantage for both. Man, that's a mouthful. And you don't see that often, what you just said, what you wrap that up in. Tell us a little bit about that, man.
So, yeah, it has always bothered's probably the wrong word, concerned, however you want to phrase it. But it goes back to the negative connotation associated with safety. And if you talk to a lot of leadership and management at a lot of different organizations, it's almost like safety is a necessary cost, right? It's something we have to do, and it is expensive just in terms of the money you're going to spend. Whether you do it right or you do it wrong, you're still going to spend a lot of money on safety.
Yeah.
And then, we talked a little bit about the frontline worker perspective, but tie into that too. Just go ask 100 people tomorrow, like, what is the goal of safety? And almost every answer you're going to get is going to revolve in some form or fashion around everybody going home in the same condition they came in, all my fingers, toes, arms, legs, all that kind of thing. And it's all that preventing harm, which is important. But I like to say, in my mind, at least, that's half the equation. And I might even argue the least important part of the equation.
Yeah.
Because if you get the second part of it right, which is the encouraging growth part. So we use a C5 leadership model, which is 5 words that start with C: competence, commitment, caring, courage, credibility. Caring in the middle, everything revolves around how much you care. We define caring as preventing harm, encouraging growth. And I think it radically changes people's thought process and the way we approach safety. If it's not my goal just to keep bad things from happening to you, I want to make it better. So you came in here this morning, let's not leave here, let's leave here. And how can we, both in terms of skills people have, relationships, interaction, just their general quality of life, the culture they work in at work, however group all that together, how can we make that better?
Right.
And so I always like to be extraordinarily clear. Safety is, for sure, we need to prevent harm.
Yeah.
And people are important. But because people are important, and if we genuinely care about them, we shouldn't limit it to prevent harm and encourage growth. So that's a huge theme throughout that whole entire book.
Yeah. No, this is amazing. This is one reason every once in a while I come up with a nickname for somebody, and for whatever reason, I call you the Grand Master of Safety. So, and I know Grandmasters, they don't call themselves Grandmasters. They don't do that, but the ones they teach do. So there you go. So anyways, that's awesome as far as the caring part, because that's something that we almost need to be taught skills. What does it mean to care about somebody? And care with somebody while you're working with them. It's not necessarily you're building up some sort of a bromance or anything. And pole buddy. You don't have to be a bromance or a pole buddy out on the field, but it's just truly realizing and having respect for the fact that their families back home deserve to have that person come back home, period.
That's fascinating you said that, because we actually spend a lot of time talking about the difference between the words liking and caring.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like to say it's nice if we can like each other, but liking is situational, right? It's not permanent. It's going to change. Sometimes you're going to like me more than other times, and sometimes you may not like me at all. Sometimes you may really like me. But depending on whatever we got going on, that could change. And so there's nothing wrong with the liking piece of it, but caring needs to trump liking all the time, especially from a leadership perspective. And I don't think sometimes we all do this. We don't realize it, whether you want to fancy terms, popularity bias or whatever else. But if your goal is for people to like you and to keep everybody happy all the time, whether that's in operations or a safety or any kind of leadership or management role, that's going to lead to problems.
Yeah.
But if you always care, again, prevent harm, encourage growth, and that's what you're motivated by, really everything else the book talks about takes care of itself. It really does.
It does.
If you genuinely care about people, and that's the starting point, and people as a whole, and then each individual. So I always tell people in leadership classes, like if you just don't like people at all and don't like being around people, it might not be a good role for you. But outside of that, we don't have to like each other. Hopefully we can, but we have to care. And caring involves a whole lot more. Obviously, it's outcomes, preventing harm and encouraging growth, but mutual respect and appreciation for you as a person and for the job you do and the task you do and what you represent. So I think that the more we can increase the caring part of it, and the obvious, easy example of that is folks that have children, right? You have a child, you care a lot about that child. Now, the first child especially, right? If you think about it, you have no clue what you're doing as a parent. You have no competence and credibility. It's something you've never done before. Most people are scared to death, really don't know what to do. But how quickly do you figure it all out just because you care so much, right? You improve yourself so you can improve them.
Yep.
Caring. And that to me is a really good example and a really good way to think about it. Now, we're never going to get to the point, nor should we probably, where we care as much about our team at work as we do our family, right? But we should care about them and their families and some of their interests and things like that enough to motivate us to want to help protect them, help encourage their growth, make sure they go home able to provide for their family. And like I said, just their general quality of life and the culture they work in at work. It's we don't spend enough time thinking about that. I like to talk about the positives of things and not so much the negatives. But you can't ignore just whether you look at depression rates or suicide rates or whatever. There's a lot of concerning statistics about people's general well-being, and it's not that difficult to correlate the fact that most of us spend the majority of our time awake, and the majority of our interactions are with the folks we work with. And so if people are really struggling just in general, I feel like there's obviously part of that is, I don't want to say they're not happy at work, but they're not satisfied at work, right? Happiness is kind of like we said with life, it's situational and whatnot, but is it a joyful work experience? More of that.
Yeah. So the premise of the book truly is learning to care about people, working together as an organization and the individuals of that organization. But I like how you use the hurdle allegory, because that's life, man. So I like how you use the hurdle allegory, basically the human condition of our consciousness, and you call it the hurdles. And let me read that real quick. The hurdles: challenges to incident prevention and safety are these are the challenges. This is great. Our lack of leadership, discounting human factors, pleasing the system, over-reliance on you, risk tolerance, and the upside-down hierarchy. The goal is to fully define and understand what creates each hurdle and then develop effective run-ups to get over them. That's beautiful, man.
I've never thought about it as life in general, but you're not wrong in saying that. So both the books, it was Frontline Leadership, The Hurdle, Frontline Incident Prevention, The Hurdle. And the concept of the hurdle is basically this, and I think it makes sense, and this example usually resonates well with people. But if I'm track and field kind of thing, right? And you watch a hurdling event, and everybody just stop and think for a minute. That hurdle, if you stand up and walk in front of it, and you're just at a standing position and try to jump over it, that's going to be hard. And depending on how high the hurdle is, it may be impossible. The important part of hurdling actually is the run up. And the better you get the run up, the easier it is to get over the hurdle. And some of those hurdles that were so high we couldn't get over from the standing position, we can now get over. And so the two pieces of that, really creating culture, and there's a lot that goes into this, and there's a lot of little sub hurdles, right? But is creating culture and developing relationships. And the better we do those two things, that's the run-up, especially when we're talking about leadership. But safety to a certain extent is that. Safety leadership for sure. Create culture, develop relationships. The more you do that, because think about the hurdles associated with safety is, as simple as somebody maybe not wearing their PPE and just correcting them, and knowing they're probably going to have a bad attitude about it, having some of those difficult conversations with people, going out and doing an observation and somebody actually wanting to get a little feedback from you and being open to a conversation. In the absence of the right kind of culture and relationship, some of those things you're literally not going to be able to do. But if you have the culture and relationships right, that's the difference. Yeah. Toxic culture, bad relationships, or absence of relationships. I go out to do a job site observations. Work's going to shut down. They do not want me to see them work the way they usually do. Create culture, develop relationships. They perceive that I'm there because I care, prevent harm, encourage growth. We create an environment where people might actually even seek feedback and value me being there. We can have a good conversation. And I think that's one of the better examples of creating culture, developing relationship. And because there are things that we need to do in terms of safety that are literally impossible in the absence of culture and relationships.
No, to me, the culture and relationship get us over that hurdle, working together, don't look at getting over the hurdle on your own, but when we get over the hurdle together as a team, then it's easy to get over. It's almost like you're flying. You don't even, it's not even like you're putting a lot of effort in it. When you put a lot of culture and you put a lot of relationship in it, it's the caring, it makes it simple. And it's almost effortless flying over that hurdle.
Yeah. In sports terms, you hear people talk about being in the zone, or you can see the moment the game slowed down for somebody. That's maybe a good way of thinking about it while we're talking about sports analogies with the hurdle. But they help you get in the zone.
Man, I really like it. So you brought this up just a little bit ago, this C5 safety leadership. So let me read this for just a moment. Leadership comes from the combination of authority and influence and is measured by the performance of your team. Love it. So I got to the equation, and you already had this equation. Right? A, authority, plus I, influence, equals P, performance, equals C5, leadership. So, and you got these listed here. And I'm going to read this just real quick. Successful leaders understand that culture is what drives behavior. And this is important, successful leaders. Because, man, David, you've seen leadership out there that is not successful, okay? And you've seen leadership out there that is successful. And you've seen leadership out there that wants to learn to be successful. So they're learning and they're growing. There's growth, there's positiveness. And there's leadership out there that doesn't want to learn nothing. So that successful leadership leaders understand that culture is what drives behavior and focus on creating culture. See, there might not be a lot of good culture. So focus on creating culture. I love that. And developing. So creating culture, developing relationships. They do this through C5 leadership, safety leadership. And then they're in order: competence, commitment, caring, courage, credibility. So, man, those 5 words are just like powerful. So get our leadership. Okay. So there's folks that are listening to this that need help. There's folks that are listening to this that want to start sharing and being inspired to help others that need help. So go over this C5 leadership: competence, commitment, caring, courage, and credibility.
So it starts with what you said, right? Leadership comes from some combination of influence and authority, which we all have. We gain authority from org charts, from experience that we have, from credentials. A lot of different things give us authority. And then influence. And there's not really anything wrong or better with either one, except to say in terms of safety, for sure. Influence needs to trump authority. And it can't just always be about telling people what to do. And so with that kind of backdrop of trying for influence to trump authority and just relying, if we can influence people, we don't have to exercise our authority. So part of safety is always going to be forcing compliance in certain situations, and I won't go there now. But the C5 leadership was really, that's what it's about, is it's a strategy to increase your influence. And the way you do that is each one of those 5 words, if you increase any one of those, you're going to gain some influence, but it's also going to increase the other 4. And so just a brief description about how that works is competence. And that's just how good you are at a task. Your level of subject matter expertise, both in soft skills like leadership and safety that we're talking about, and for the technical task that somebody's doing. And so if you can, the way I like to phrase it, develop solutions and solve problems for people for whatever task it is they're doing. You think of a hobby. You were reading my bio, you laughed about it. I play golf, but I'm not a golfer. Right. So if I want to get better at golf, which I need to, think about this for any task, including somebody something somebody does at work. Hopefully they want to get better at whatever it is. Generally speaking, people like to do a good job. They like to be better at what it is they do. And so we'll just use golf as an example. But if I wanted to get better at golf, how would I go about that? The very first step I would take would be, hopefully it might be somebody I know, or in today's world, I can go online and find all sorts of videos or whatever else. Now, if I'm going online and looking for a video, or I'm looking for one of my, somebody that I know personally, who am I going to pick if I want them to help me get better at golf? The best golfer I can find, right? And so if it's online, I might look at all their ratings and stars, or, maybe somebody's got a personal experience they can share. If it's somebody I know from an authority standpoint, I can look at their scores and their handicaps and this sort of thing. But I start with the most competent person I know, right?
Yep.
And then from there, so if they've established that competence, then if they're committed, which just, I always define that just how passionate you are about achieving goals. And that at work needs to be individual goals for yourself and each individual on the team, and the team as a whole, and to a certain extent what the organization is trying to accomplish, but how passionate we are now in this case about David becoming a better golfer, right? Yeah. Well, skip the caring piece of it. We've talked about it a little bit. Courage. So this actually happened to me, and I think you might have heard me tell this story before. I call it the kindest insult I've ever gotten in my life. But I walk off the golf course one day, and the guy I know, who happens to literally be the best golfer that I know personally, walks up to me out of the blue, and he's like, he literally said, I'll never forget the way he worded it. He said, "David, you're too athletic and you play too much golf to be that bad." And but it takes a little bit of courage to challenge people. So courage, and then credibility. You start tying a couple of these concepts together. So we've got caring in the middle. Everything revolves around how much we care. Credibility at the bottom, because it's foundational. If you don't have it, you're done. But now, after this conversation, commitment, competence, whatever, he followed that up with, you're the worst golfer I've ever seen. You're too athletic, play too much golf. But then he said, meet me at the driving range tomorrow night. Yeah, which I was excited about, right? And I did. Yeah. And I started doing some of the things that he was talking about, and a couple more sessions. Nobody's getting paid, just volunteering time, right? Just working with me on some things. I started to see some results. And we shift from, I really think about that at work, like, especially in terms of feedback and trying to help people improve performance, like we force it on people. And if we start with me not thinking that you're competent, committed, caring, or credible, or you don't take courage and speak up and whatnot, I'm not going to listen to whatever it is you have to say, no matter how good it is. But if we can create this environment, right, culture and relationships, where I am seeking feedback from you and I know that you're competent, committed, and you care, it's amazing what starts to happen and how I wish I could say easily I could improve at golf, but I did get a lot better. I mean, I really did. And that's just a good example of now think at work, how we can demonstrate those sort of things. Right? How can we develop solutions, solve problems for people? How can we just help them get better? What are ways we can show we're passionate about their success? Where are our opportunities? And I'll tell you, sometimes it's as simple as, I was teaching a virtual class one day, and somebody said, typed in the chat window, "Hey, it bothers me nobody's got their camera on." To which I replied back, "Why don't you have your camera on? Nobody else does." Sometimes courage is as simple as being the first one to cut your camera. Now, that's an easy example. A little harder example when your job title is safety coordinator and you're sitting in a room with 11 people that are VPs and CEOs, and they're going this direction, and we should probably be going this direction, and speaking up then maybe a little hard. And then some of those one-on-one conversations and whatnot. But that is such a good starting point for anybody that just wants to gain influence, become a more successful leader. Is to ask yourself what are some practical ways I can demonstrate genuinely. The caring part of it has to be genuine. Right. The rest of it can work on, and the credibility. Those are the two you can't lose. You lose those, you're done. But for the rest of it, how can I demonstrate and gain a little more confidence? How can I show some more commitment? And where are some opportunities for me to speak up? And in doing that, you're going to become more caring and credible. And the more confident you are at something, the more likely you probably are to speak up.
That's right.
So growing your confidence is going to grow your confidence and your courage, which is going to increase your influence. And it's almost that, it continues to gain momentum. So I love that C5 model, especially the fact that it revolves around caring with the foundation of credibility.
Yeah. Without caring, none of that other stuff really works. And without caring, you cannot truly have success in the other 4 points. There's no way. Truly. So we're going to continue on here. I thought this was interesting. I like how you bring with AI, you got all this AI crud going on, and it's just amazing what's happening. It's almost like dehumanization to me, sorta. But this is interesting. This brings the human part back, what you brought here. The Department of Energy, DOE, Human Performance Improvement Handbook defines human factors as a study of how human beings function within various work environments as they interact with equipment in the performance of various roles and tasks. And then you give the reference. In applying that definition, we must acknowledge humans are fallible and unique with freedom of thought. Until recently, that was something that simply wasn't taken into account. And still today, many organizations struggle, incorporating it into their safety and health management systems. This is like kind of in your face kind of stuff right here. Discounting human factors equates to thinking of people like robots. And then you gave a quote from Mr. Alan Quilley, and he said, "Let's manage safety, recognizing how humans are, and stop managing safety the way we wish humans were." Man, what a tell us a little bit about that, man.
Yeah, so the way that, if you think about it, the way we wish humans were, and think about if you're working with somebody in particular, how do you wish that they were, or any interaction we have? We don't realize this, and I should say, like, a lot of the things that the book talks about, and a lot of the things that we train on, are not things people do intentionally. They're things a lot of times we think we do with good intentions, and we just don't realize what we're doing. But we tend to, just generally speaking, when we're interacting with other people, we tend to wish that they were two things, that they were like us and that they were perfect. Neither of those
Like
are
us.
true. They're not, right?
Perfect like us. Is that what you said?
They're not like us, and that, or we wish that they were like us and that they were perfect. So yeah, perfect like us. Yeah.
Right.
But safety is a really good example. I really think we've always kind of assumed that if we did really good training and we had good programs and people had been trained on our perfect little programs, that they were going to perform perfectly, and we just couldn't believe when negative outcomes happen. We don't take into account people can make mistakes, that they will make mistakes. And then even at an individual level, risk tolerance, complacency, normalization, deviation, some of these kind of terms, it's this task is so simple, it can't hurt me. Or I've done this task for so long, I'm so good at it, I can't get hurt doing it. And so from a leadership perspective, I really love thinking about it that way. Lead people, not robots, I think is the title of the run-up to that hurdle. And what it talks about is, and it's really interesting to think about this, right? If I tell a robot to do something, meaning I program it, what's it going to do?
Yeah.
Exactly what I tell it to do, exactly the same way every single time, and it's probably not going to make mistakes. If it does make a mistake, I legitimately need to fix that robot. Hardware, software, something's wrong with it. I fix it, problem solved. People, on the other hand, you tell a person to do something, what are they going to do? And, people usually try to phrase it a little nicer than this, but at the end of the day, whatever the heck we want in the circumstance we're in, right? They're not just going to listen because you told them to do something. And we are subject to things robots are, like peer pressure and stress and time pressure and distractions and interruptions and fatigue and a whole lot of things like that. So we're going to make mistakes, and we need to. Now, that doesn't mean we're just going to get hurt. We can protect ourselves. That's a whole other topic. That's that upside down hierarchy. But we're going to make mistakes, and we can protect ourselves from those mistakes, and we can do things to reduce the number of mistakes we make. But we're going to make mistakes. The interesting thing too is when we make mistakes with the robot, we got to fix the robot. But if I make a mistake, then do we need to fix me? And does that need to be our focus? Now, there's probably things that do need fixing or correcting or improving about me, right? And there's things that I can do. But culture is what drives behavior. You mentioned that earlier. And so if one thing that we need to consider with people and not robots is what system, environment, culture are they working in, and how is that impacting their behavior?
Correct. Right?
Because we don't realize how powerful that statement is sometimes, and the impact that. So I'll ask you a question. This is a good example. If your child has 103-degree fever, should you take them to school?
I wouldn't take them to school if they have a fever.
Right. So and most people, you shouldn't take them to school. All right. They've got a big test that day that's going to account for 25% of their grade for the entire semester. They've got an A right now, and the teacher's got a policy that says, no matter what your reason, if you're out a day of a test, for every day that you miss, because you get an extra day of study that everybody else didn't have, you get 10 points off your grade. Now, your kid's got a 103-degree fever on that day. It's an A average. This is 25% of their grade. Even if they make 100, it's going to turn into a 90.
Yeah.
Given that culture, process, system, whatever word you want to use there, is it now a good decision to take your kid to school with a 103-degree fever? Now, I don't want to debate that, but here's what I want to debate is what would most people do in that situation?
Yeah.
If we understand culture and context drive behavior, then we can really think about how is culture and context driving behavior, and not just say, well, David messed up, David made an error, we got to fix David. We got to at least start with what was the culture and the context, what influenced it. And then we can look at all these things and create an environment where the average person would make a good decision rather than the average person would make the same decision David did. Now we're trying to fix 100 more individuals that did the same thing David did, even though it made sense to all 100 of them.
you brought up something that's pretty good here. So we have an event, an incident that takes place. So we're going to have a stand down, everybody, and we're going to have more training, more skills. We're going to review things that we've already been practicing and reviewing and training for years and years and years. Now we're going to have a stand down because an incident took place, but we're not going to make anything better. All we're going to do is hit repeat and repeat, and we're just going to go ahead and do it again. Or check this out. Someone has an incident, and to protect the people that are higher ups, we need to fire this person. And then they take that bad attitude to a new company, and they'll get a job the next day. Absolutely. And yet the culture that was the true, let's say, root cause continues. That's crazy, man.
Yeah, so I try intentionally not to spend a lot of time talking about incident analysis, because I really like to focus on incident prevention, so we don't need to analyze if we prevent. Then we can spend our time learning from near misses, near hits, good catches, all that kind of stuff. Learn from successes too. That's something that's a whole other topic that we're not going to get into right now. This I've always thought was very flawed logic, right? So let's start with a simple example, and then we'll go back to some of the incidents that happen a lot in this industry. So if you lock your keys in the car today, how long is it going to be before that happens again? Probably a while.
Anytime soon. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's probably going to be a while. In other words, you learn from your mistake. We're actually pretty good at that. Absolutely. Now, let's think about the kinds of incidents that happen in this industry. And especially usually the worse an incident is, the more attention it gets. And so obviously a good example, an arc flash. And so here's what I promise you, back to this whole people and robots and systems and human error theory and whatever else. If somebody's been involved in an arc flash, guess who doesn't need any help for that not to happen in them again ever? They learned that lesson the hard way. So the more we're focusing on them, the more we're losing. And then you said it. I love the situation where we spend so much time investigating and analyzing to come up with the magical solution that people need to wear their PPE and pay attention and follow the rules, which we probably knew before anybody got hurt. And we have safety stand downs and do retraining because the training we did worked so good the first time. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I do think it's interesting if you at least start with that thought, like that one individual has learned the lesson the hard way. We can't unharm them at the moment. We can't take the incident back. So do we start with, this is the gauge. This is the gauge. You'll like this, Brent. So we were talking about competence earlier. We said leaders, should develop solutions and solve problems. What's the opposite of that? I call it A, B, C, D, E. Accuse, blame, complain, defend, deny, make excuses. And we're really good at blaming, which helps nothing. It doesn't develop solutions. It doesn't solve problems. And so, that again, I'm not discounting the fact that there's probably something at an individual level that happened that needs to be corrected. The point I'm making in terms of the goal of preventing incidents and similar incidents from happening again in the future, if I've done something really bad and I've been hurt by it and I had a horrible experience with it, I learned that lesson the hard way. It is not going to happen to me again. So how can we figure out a way to make that same lesson equally valuable to everybody else in the organization that does a similar kind of work that might be exposed to those same hazards in that same environment that I was in? Then we can get somewhere.
Yeah. I'd like to touch on that maybe after there's at the end here, circle back around to that, David. Definitely, because I've experienced firsthand those that share incidences compared to companies that hide incidences. So it's amazing the culture difference, the happiness and well-being of the people. So let's come back to that in just a moment. But I like to finish kind of the book and head to the finish line, head to that last hurdle. We jumped over that last hurdle. We're coming into that finish line of this race here called our humanness. Okay. One another. And I'd like to read this last bit at the end of the book. Page 164, make everything plural. This is really cool. I learned this tip from Mario Fernandez, which I did training for these folks. So that's interesting.
I'm glad you brought his name
High
up.
voltage.
I was going to. Yeah, that was so cool. He taught me that.
Yeah. What a great guy.
Yes.
And when I read your book, it's like, dang, that's Mario. So that's cool. But he said this, Jordan High Voltage, you can paralyze almost any word in English by adding an S to its end. And in this case, S means, this is beautiful, S means share. Consider the STAR, stop, think, act, review. Because we're coming to this finish line, David. We're all going to be stars. We're all going to learn to care. And we're going to cross these hurdles successfully together. And it says, STAR, stop, think, act, review. Self-checking tool. And this is important that we open ourselves up and look in the mirror. That's got to be first and foremost versus point at other people. That's an issue. That's a problem. Self-checking tool from Human Performance. It's a fantastic tool that is simple to learn, easy to implement, and highly effective. And we can make it even better by adding an S and turning it into stars. See, I like that. I really like this. Stop, think, act, review, share. Apply the same logic to a near-miss report or an incident review and make them near-miss reports or incident reviews that are shared. Oh my gosh. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, we just said it, right? You learn best from experiences, positive and negative.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
when I learn something, and we'll really just, since we're wrapping up, we'll tie all the concepts together. If I care about you, Brent, and I do, I care about you, and I've learned something that I think could help you, and my goal is to prevent your harm and encourage your growth, guess what I'm automatically going to do? I'm going to share it with you, whatever lesson it was that I learned.
And you do.
And so sometimes I think we make this stuff too complicated. There's a class just this simple, like yesterday, last night, on his way home from the airport. A guy I do a lot of training with, and we teach some similar programs and whatnot, called me and he was just like, hey, when this comes up sometimes, here's how I handle this and here's what happened. Just, share it, right? And a lot of times I think that, especially in terms of safety, we focus so much on learning from what we screwed up on that we miss the value of learning and sharing successes. And it's always been kind of our attitude, I think, that, safety is part of our job. It's what we pay people to do. So we're only going to talk about it when they don't, which is, that's a whole nother subject. And I'm not going to get myself sidetracked and even go there now. But one thing I would definitely encourage everybody to do, share successes and share what happened and why it happened and how it was a benefit to people, because it's amazing how often folks are just working out of habit patterns and whatnot and don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. But when we can learn from successes, the more we get comfortable doing that, guess what happens? We get more comfortable sharing our errors and our failures and our incidents. And we stop trying to protect people or cover things up or whatever for various reasons. Those sort of things happen. But that might be one of the things that I would say, because I do love that. Make everything plural. Add an S to it for sharing. But success should be included in that. I guess to be grammatically proper, we'd have to add an ES to success. But anyway, success is. I succeeded. What led to that success, and how can we repeat it? That's a great question to ask people. I don't think we do that enough. I think it's always focused on what did we do wrong that we got to fix.
So, as far as working on this building and fostering a line team attitude and a line team culture, I see a lot of success when we share an incident. I noticed, sharing successes, 100% absolutely. But I also see great success when the culture on that line team, and I've seen it, to where it is safe to share. And they build a culture to where they can share freely an incident. They're not embarrassed. They're not mocked. They're not looked down upon. They don't lose their job. And what happens is everybody benefits from sharing the incident. And that creates a more successful line team, as if we were playing football or a game. And hey, you know what? We made a mistake on that play. And then 2 quarters later, we're going to do that again, but we're going to change it up. We're going to do things just a little. The count's going to be a little different. There's going to be a little different strategy in the same play. And that same play 2 quarters later makes a touchdown because they relived it. But this time they took the issue that caused them not to be successful away. They mitigated it. They identified it. They mitigate it. They eliminate it. And then they do it again. And this time they are successful. And David, I see a lot of success stories where I've had people reach out and say, hey, Brent, we need help. Big companies too. We need help. We've lost our why. Have you ever gotten that call? David, we need help. We literally have lost our why. Talk about that for just a moment.
Yeah, so man, you just said so much stuff there, and it's so true. Like, you want to talk about maybe what we could define as the biggest hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody voluntarily reporting something that there's a rule for that they violated, or it might not have been intentional, so violation may be the wrong word. But let's just say it this way. I did something that could get me disciplined or fired, and now you want me to voluntarily report it. You want to talk about if you don't have the right kind of culture and the right kind of relationship, something that is not going to happen. But what's interesting, if you do invest a little bit in the culture and relationships, and I voluntarily report that, I'm sure, Brent, you've seen this happen before, is I'll voluntarily report it, and immediately people in the room are like, well, you know what? I just did the same thing yesterday. And I just saw the same thing yesterday. And that same thing happened to us 2 weeks ago. Nothing blew up. Nobody got hurt, but we were there. And then you start, well, okay, so this wasn't, again, David's not now the focus of this, right? Where this is something we can all learn from together and bringing attention to it. So getting people comfortable sharing, for sure. You can't put enough value in that. Successes, failures, errors, a lot of words you could put in there, but we need to share and we need to learn from them. But people aren't going to share in the absence of culture and relationships. So the other thing was the why, and we've lost our why. It's there's so much stuff that goes into that, and I won't spend a lot of time on it other than to say, back to our definition or the goal of that C5 leadership, influence over authority. How do I gain influence? And influence is all about explaining and understanding and believing in the why. Authority is all about, you have to do this because some rule or some person or whatever said so. And there's truth in both, for sure. But the more as safety leaders that we're focused on influence, the more people are automatically going to understand why and be bought in. Yeah. And I think that a lot of the reason that we've lost our why is because of the very authoritative kind of leadership that do this because the rule says so and do this or else. And if we start without the why, the rest of it's going to be very difficult. So that if you want to overcome that, and it's easy to say sitting here talking to you in this environment we're in, a little bit harder organization for sure, but it's got to start with C5 leadership. And truth be told, it's got to start at the individual and the team level. You're not going to go change the whole entire organization and the belief and understanding of the why tomorrow. That's actually possible at the team level. And then that can start to permeate through. And I think that's something in terms of organizational culture that people sometimes get wrong, is trying to change the organizational culture rather than thinking about what's my relationship with my team like. What can I do with the culture and the relationship, my interactions with Brent? What can I do about that right now? Not encouraged, not waiting for the organization to do something for us, but what can we do about it?
Yeah. So basically, your whole book right here, this whole book, I want to show it to everybody right here. This whole book, what it does the theme is caring, and then you wrapped it up with sharing. And, you've heard it, sharing is caring. And what people don't understand is competence, commitment, courage, credibility. When you work on the caring and you do the sharing, those 4 things, competence, commitment, courage, and credibility, they become friggin' byproducts, David. It's a beautiful thing. They're literally byproducts. You don't even try to hit those other four keywords. You don't even try, but the byproduct of sharing and caring, guess what? It's automatic, buddy. It's a beautiful thing. This is great, man. This is great.
Now, Brent,
great.
Now I'm mad at you, though, because that would have been, we should have had this conversation before I published the book, because that was much better than what I said. I love what you
Well,
just
you're
said.
going to reprint.
Nothing to add to it.
You're going to reprint. Brilliant. You're going to reprint, and you could do a little edit. That's all.
Second edition featuring Brent. That's right. Yes.
Nah, I don't want nothing. Yes. This is you, bud. This is you. So, David, I think that's any closing words, man? I think this is a great jumping off point.
I can add nothing to what you just said. I don't want to.
No. Well, you influenced me, bud. So it ain't on me. We do it together. We're a line team. So, hey, we're going to get over the hurdle together, and we're going to be successful together, and we're going to win the game every day and go home happy, healthy, mentally sound, because we're doing this as a team.
Right. And on that note, I love what you're doing with ECOS and a lot of the stuff that you're doing. Don't discount the influence that you're having on the industry as a whole. So appreciate what you do.
No, we appreciate incident prevention. You've been here 3 times now, shared unbelievable lineman safety national webinars. In fact, I got him the art of safety, man, and then game plan for safety. And then you shared frontline leadership, the hurdle, what we've been kind of talking about today. And really appreciate the collaboration that ECOS has with incident prevention. In fact, electricculturesafety.com, on the homepage, there's a tab that will take the folks right to your website on electricculturesafety.com website. So we're working together as a team, and we have the same goals, the same targets. And David, I see the change. We feel the change. We're in the change, brother.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Agree.
Yeah. And appreciate you coming on board and sharing your heart with us, man.
Always. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for sharing your live line story. Appreciate it.